Your daughter left inside the car. Has passed away.
I was suddenly informed by a police officer who came to my workplace. Disturbed, I hurriedly contacted my mother, who was supposed to be with my child.
We're together. She's having a snack right now.
I breathed a sigh of relief at those words, but it was short-lived. The sharp gaze of the police officer was directed at me. However, being falsely accused made me realize the hidden truth. I'm Nancy, 38 years old. I'm living with my husband and my child. My husband, who is 4 years older, is the sales manager at a house builder company. Due to his job, he often works on weekends and doesn't contribute much to childcare or household chores. Just asking him to pick up our kid on his day off when I'm working can put him in a bad mood. There was a time when I, working at a drugstore, asked him to take care of our kid on a Sunday when I had to work, but
can't you let me relax on my day off? Unlike you with your easy part-time job, I work in a battlefield-like workplace every day.
John is good at playing by himself, so he's not that demanding.
Tisk. Fine. Do what you want. Just make sure you're back home as soon as work's done.
Feeling worried if he's actually taking care of things properly with such an indifferent attitude, I couldn't focus on work that day. Eventually, I started leaving the kids with my mother who lives nearby. Being bad at expressing myself, I knew arguing wouldn't help and I didn't like the tense atmosphere. I guess he's just tired. Can't be helped. With that mindset, I've been struggling with childcare and household chores while working part-time. Then, one day, the unexpected happened. I remember that day being very cold. Early in the morning, I received a frantic call from my manager at work.
Can you come in to cover for a sick staff member?
Staff members often cover for each other in times of need. I might be a bit late as I need to drop off my kid, but I'll be there. After hanging up, I called my mother, who readily agreed to help out, and I quickly started getting ready.
Should I take him to your mother-in-law's place?
My husband Jason said something surprisingly cooperative. Really? Are you sure? What about work? His usually indifferent attitude made his offer seem out of character, leaving me surprised.
It's fine. We'll make it in time if we leave now.
Watching my husband happily lift up our child, I felt a rush of happiness. Thank you. Oh, but we need a child seat for this one.
How about using Nancy's car today? I'll drive you to the station too. You can't handle driving my car, right?
His car is large, and I'm too scared to drive it. Are you sure? That would be a big help. After safely arriving at work, I was greatly appreciated by the manager and greeted with thanks from regular customers, leaving me feeling happy. However, just before 4 p.m., as my shift was about to end, I was called to the back room via the store announcement system. There were 2 men there. The manager whispered to me.
They're from the police.
Then, looking bewildered, the manager introduced me, saying,
This is Nancy.
Police. I'm Nancy, but... In my confused state, I desperately searched for any clues, but I couldn't imagine why plainclothes officers would come to see me. For some reason, the police officer scrutinized me from head to toe with a piercing gaze.
Please. Try to stay calm and listen. Your daughter has passed away.
My daughter. Whose? The officer calmly began to explain the situation to me, which only added to my confusion. Apparently, my car, parked in the coin parking lot behind the station, contained the body of a girl around 1 year old who had passed away from the cold. The driver of the car parked next to mine happened to notice something was wrong and called an ambulance, but it was too late by the time they arrived. It was only then that I finally understood that I was being suspected as the one responsible for creating that situation. Wait a minute. I don't understand what's going on, and I only have a son. Besides, I left him with my mother today. The police officer lightly brushed off my desperate explanation, adopting an uncompromising attitude. It seemed they had already concluded that I had left my child in the car while I was at work. Treated almost like a criminal, I was finally allowed to contact my mother after being placed in the police car.
My, what a strange child. She's with me, isn't she?
My mother, unaware of the situation, sounded incredulous over the phone. Though I felt relief hearing that my son was safe, the fact remained unchanged. The girl was found dead in my car. Upon arriving at the police station, I was repeatedly questioned by a sharp-eyed detective, who asked the same questions over and over again. I explained that on that morning, my husband had taken our child and driven him to my mother's place in my car. As a result, my suspicion seemed to have been cleared for the time being, but despite the police's attempts to contact him, my husband remained unreachable. While the police tried to reach him, they asked me,
"Do you know the deceased girl? We'd like to confirm."
Honestly, this moment was more painful than being suspected myself. Seeing the girl lying there, seemingly asleep, I couldn't help but cry for her. Unfortunately, my impression of her was that I might have seen her somewhere before. When I honestly conveyed this to the police officer, he said,
"Please contact us if you remember anything."
Finally, I was released. It was getting dark outside, and I hurried to my mother's house where my son was waiting. While my child slept, I explained the situation to my mother, who comforted me, crying and comforting me. When I returned home, it was past 9 p.m., and my son fell asleep immediately. During that time, I called my husband several times, but there was no answer. Finally, late that night, I received an email from him saying,
"I suddenly had to go on a business trip."
I immediately tried calling him, but the calls just kept ringing, so I replied to the email saying, "Something serious is happening." However, after that, I couldn't reach him again. That day, I spent the whole night without sleeping, but there was something else bothering me besides my husband. That girl. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. Anyway, I won't know anything until I ask my husband about the situation. I waited for the start of my husband's work hours and finally mustered the courage to call him. I wanted him to contact his company from his business trip location, but to my surprise, I found out that he had been on leave since the previous day. "Oh, I see. I'm sorry, thank you." After hanging up, I couldn't think straight for a while. In the midst of shock, the only thing I could think of was to consult with my best friend Amy. As I opened my phone to make the call, I was startled. Hastily, I checked the messages Amy had sent me. No way. This can't be true. In one of the messages was a picture that shocked me to the point where I involuntarily exclaimed. Because there, in the photo with Amy, was the girl who had been left in my car. What a revelation. The deceased was Amy's daughter. Yesterday's inexplicable events suddenly fell into place. Why was Amy's child left in my car? It wasn't just paranoia. I became convinced that my husband and my best friend were having an affair. And I recalled a scene from 2 years ago when Amy, divorced and single, got pregnant. She had said,
"Who the dad is will be a secret from Nancy. The life of an unwed mother, right?"
With a meaningful smile. Could that girl possibly be my husband's child? There was no concrete evidence, but I couldn't let it slide. Overwhelmed with anger at being deceived by my husband and best friend for so long, and for the sake of the deceased girl, I resolved to uncover the truth. Despite my usual aversion to confrontation, I had been passive in contradicting my husband until this betrayal opened my eyes. An innocent child suffered because of the foolishness of 2 adults. I was determined to bring closure, so I immediately took action. After dropping off my child at daycare, I headed straight to Amy's house. When I arrived at her apartment and rang the doorbell, Amy, with sleepy eyes, opened the door. "Long time no see. Were you sleeping?"
"Huh? Nancy. Why?"
Seeing Amy's bare face, she quickly tried to close the door, but I anticipated it and wedged my bag between the door. "Jason is here too, right? Let's talk inside." I think I found Amy's fluster amusing and was smiling. Perhaps my smile seemed eerie and frightening to Amy.
"Fine. But that's so unfair, springing this on me out of nowhere."
With a tense smile, Amy reluctantly let me in. I heard her calling out to my husband to wake up from the back room.
Huh. Nancy?
My husband was indeed there, still half asleep. However, his surprise lasted only a moment, and by the time he came to the living room, he was already completely unapologetic.
Tisk. So, you figured it out, huh?
Upon seeing my face, he brazenly remarked in a joking tone. Amy, who had been flustered just moments ago, was now grinning behind my husband. Could you stop teasing me? I have something to ask. I said.
Oh, scary, scary.
Feeling the urge to shout at Amy for her feigned surprise, I desperately suppressed it.
You probably contacted her about her daughter, right?
Even though you know that, why aren't you two going to pick her up? It seemed like my husband and Amy expected me to be contacted about Amy's daughter. How much do these people really know? Still, I couldn't understand their actions.
Come on, cut me some slack. Isn't she being taken care of by the police?
With those words, I realized they didn't know about the death of her child, but I was shocked by their overly optimistic attitude. At that moment, I decided I would only reveal the truth after extracting it from them. But why did this happen? I asked.
Well, we were surprised too. When we got back to the parking lot, there were a lot of people around the car.
Yeah, there were some dramatic folks there.
Then, the two of them started chatting away about what happened the day before. It turns out my husband, who had taken a day off, had planned to spend time with Amy from the start. But when they tried to check into a hotel near the station, Amy's child became a nuisance, they said. So, they parked my car in a coin parking lot and went to the hotel, leaving the child in the car. Learning about their impulsive actions left me speechless. And when they returned from the hotel to the parking lot, they found the police surrounding my car and even an ambulance had arrived. Feeling it was getting serious, they apparently fled the scene. In such a situation, one would normally worry about the child, but the two of them had conveniently interpreted the situation to suit themselves. They were considering that the police were taking care of the child, seeing it as an opportunity to take a break from childcare duties for a while and relax. It left me utterly dumbfounded. So, how long have you two been together? I asked straight to the point, despite their unabashed recounting of events.
You're quite oblivious, aren't you?
Oh, that's so like Nancy. Well, it's been since right after my divorce. It's been 4 years.
I was just helping Amy out with her divorce. It's a common pattern.
I had actually suspected my husband of cheating at the time, but being pregnant, I chalked it up to nerves and dismissed it as my imagination. It was quite a surprise to find out that his affair was with my best friend. Right. So, then you're the father of Amy's child?
That's right. Unlike our son, our daughter is adorable.
Peering into my face, as if trying to provoke me, my husband nonchalantly admitted to it. He said he just happened to think of borrowing my car. Since Amy didn't have a car, he thought they could all go out together since my car had a child seat. Well, why didn't you just divorce me and marry Amy then? Feeling like our time together had been wasted, I blamed my husband. But once again, he came up with an unbelievable excuse.
Too naive. If I did that, my affair and having a child would be exposed at work, wouldn't it? It would hinder my promotion.
To sacrifice us for that. I thoroughly despised my husband.
Nancy, that's not all.
Even Amy, who was next to my husband, snickered and began to speak down to me.
Jason said since his wife can't even talk back, she's basically just a maid, so he can do whatever he wants from now on as well.
Well, but, Amy, was that really okay with you? Even though you have kids? I asked with genuine curiosity, but Amy burst into laughter, clutching her stomach.
Haha. I'm so done with marriage. As long as I get my living expenses, I'm fine.
Yeah, Amy's a hassle because she's expensive, unlike Nancy. Haha.
My husband and Amy spoke so frankly, as if I were just part of the scenery or something. I was beginning to reach my breaking point with these selfish two. Anyway, what are we going to do now? You can't just leave it like this, can they? I subtly steered the conversation.
Is it that serious? Amy, go pick her up right away.
Yeah, I guess we've been caught. I have to go pick her up. But, I'll probably get scolded by the police.
She's not old enough to come home alone anyway.
Up until now, they hadn't shown any concern for the child, only worrying about themselves whenever they opened their mouths. Enough is enough. There's no room for sympathy. Finally, I decided to reveal the truth here. I'm disgusted. Both of you are only thinking about yourselves.
Huh? What are you trying to say?
My husband glared at me with displeasure, but I felt no hesitation. I'll tell you the truth. Your daughter died yesterday. Because she was left in the car in the middle of winter. Both of them widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. Poor thing. How cold must it have been?
What are you talking about? That's impossible.
Your thoughtless actions took the life of an innocent child. Then, Amy pointed at me and started yelling.
It's your fault. It's all Nancy's fault.
Amy, you're really something else. How about showing a little remorse?
Shut up. Shut up. It's all Nancy's fault for marrying Jason.
Amy introduced her husband to me, so I couldn't understand the meaning behind it. I thought perhaps Amy was in a state of confusion due to the shock of losing her child.
When I was going through a tough divorce, you had to rub it in by getting married. Showing off your happiness like that is unforgivable.
What are you talking about? Your affair was the reason for the divorce, wasn't it? You brought it upon yourself.
No, it's not like that. It wasn't supposed to be like this.
Crying, Amy continued. I was supposed to be happier. And kept focusing on herself. Meanwhile, my husband desperately tried to justify himself while watching Amy cry uncontrollably.
I'm not involved in this. I always intended it to be just an affair from the start.
It's too late for that now.
Amy's child might not even be mine, right? Nancy, technically we're still not divorced, right?
He tried to cozy up to me as he spoke. I shook off his hand and uttered in a low, grave voice. Coward. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. With that, I discreetly contacted the police while leaving the scene, casting a sidelong glance at the two engaging in an ugly argument. 2 days later, I received a call from the police informing me that the evidence from the surveillance cameras in the parking lot had been crucial, leading to the arrest of the two. Now, both of them will face legal consequences. They will have a long and tough road ahead, all of which they have sown themselves. Meanwhile, I began a peaceful life with my mother and son. With the help of the drugstore manager, I secured a job as a full-time employee. I am excited for this unexpected fresh start in life.